But keep in mind, we are talking about hope for the future, which is the Holy Spirit, okay? And so with the Christology, you have to look at it, and they're saying focus on Jesus, and that's good. But let's just take a really common way of looking at what that means. Okay, basic way of looking at what that means. Okay? If you ask a question, and they say that Jesus or God or the Holy Spirit will speak to you, that's true. No matter what question you ask, your brain will seek an answer. Okay? Now, your brain is going to utilize information it has and information available to it, i.e., the natural law. Oh my gosh, there is an order to some things. Oh my gosh, there's gravity that always works. And so the more that you learn with regards to curriculum, with regards to knowledge or reality, the more you learn, the more it makes sense. It's only when you get into fear and confusion, or to further extremes, the extremes are where chaos comes in. So, the world is supposed to make sense. And I believe in God, and I believe in God the Father. Okay, so as a father, I want the world to make sense for my children. And so I set them up for success. And so that's what I believe about God. He wants us to use our noggin. Okay? There's that famous joke of, there was the couple that was, there was a flood that came, and they finally had to get up on the roof of their house, and they were, and they were waiting. But as they were going up, the flood was coming in, the local fire department came by with the boat and said, "Hey guys, it's getting bad. Get in the boat here with us and go." And the couple's like, "No, we believe in God. God's going to save us." So they go on up, and then later, another boat comes by while they're up at the top window of the house, and they say, "Guys, it's getting really bad. You need to get out of here." And they're like, "No, God's going to save us." And so then they're up on the roof, and last chance, they're just standing there, their feet are in water, and a helicopter comes by and says, "Hey guys, here's a line." And they're like, "No thanks, no, God's going to save us." Well, they get to the pearly gates, and they're like, "God, we believed and trusted in you all our lives. Why didn't you save us?" And God says, "I sent 2 boats and a helicopter." That's my point. It's not Jesus going to come down and save you. Jesus is all around. Whatever you touch is Jesus. Whatever you touch is in natural law. And Jesus is omnipotent in natural law. So anything you see, feel, or touch is Jesus speaking. And if you ask the question, you will arrive at an answer. And that's true for each of the 4 laws. Okay, so just a way to make that connection. You have to distinguish between person and attribute. And the names and the nouns are different, and they serve different functions. The name identifies the soul or the individual or the person, and the attributes define their capability and power. Now, the thing is, we have different attributes. Some people are faster, stronger, smarter. Some people are older and getting frail. Some people are very strong in their 30s or whatever. Those are attributes, and they vary. And there are differences among attributes in natural law. Okay? And so things can be diverse in terms of attributes. And so divergent thinking is good. How can we use these attributes in attributes and come up with a better something going on here? And so it's looking at the differences. That's what happens in curriculum, is understanding the concepts. But when you come down to divine law, okay, when you're talking about the human soul, we all have the same worth in divine law. Every soul is equal to another soul in creation. And so what we need to do is is we need to have convergence. We need to have acceptance on individuals in terms of their significance or their net worth as a life force. And so those are all equal. What's not equal is in the attribute level in the natural law. Some people are bigger and stronger. It's just the way it is. But that does not define the noun. Okay, that defines the attributes that they have access to with regards to power in natural law. Okay, but their virtues, their net worth in divine law and relationships is equal. We're all co-equal. So now I want to get into the meat of what I really want to discuss, because we are down now into eternal law. And I am an absolute proponent that small group facilitation is the most paramount way of instruction. And there are several reasons for that. The greatest reason is it gives that staying power. See, if we look at the curriculum, okay, and we have a curriculum and atheists have a curriculum, okay, or Scientologists or naturalists or whatever. There are different curriculums out there. And so if we go through a curriculum and someone else goes through a curriculum, and of course we know people get brainwashed, and we know that they have those places where you can go and get deprogrammed. And so it's all a matter of, well, what have you been told? And whatever you've been told is what you tend to believe. Okay, that's dealing with the curriculum. My point is that it's on the instructional side that's going to give more staying power. Okay? So if your instruction, if the way that you teach, i.e. through small group facilitation, if you teach that way, you will download the process into the students, okay? Because it's a process you go through for, 180 days when you have them in your classroom. Or you have them 18 years in your home. Or you're in a church for 80 years. Now, these are all small groups, but few of them are being facilitated. Most of them are disseminating information. This is what you believe. This is what we believe. If you call yourself one of us, then this is what you believe. And that's the way most teaching takes place. And it's a very authoritarian way of teaching. I've got the microphone and I will tell you what to believe. And you will believe it because I have the microphone. And then when you get the microphone, then you tell people what to believe because you have the microphone. That is not teaching. That is dissemination of information, which may or may not be truthful. Okay? Either way, and it may be very truthful, but it's still just disseminating information. It is not teaching. And Jesus said, very few of you should consider yourselves teachers. Now, this is where the Trinity model, Megajoy, and I come in, is that facilitating, group facilitation, it's a knowledge base and a set of skills that are knowable and are learnable and are teachable. And that's what we're doing today, is we are teaching these skills how to facilitate instruction in the classroom. Now, it does work the same way. You can do it 101, but unfortunately 101, most people have their own places where they draw the line and they have their own defenses and their own coping mechanisms for getting through life. It's in a small group that there's more accountability. And I don't mean accountability like, oh, we caught you being bad. No, that's not accountability. Accountability is when people reflect on who they are in this group and how they're presenting themselves. Okay? And is it something that the group as a whole agrees on? Okay? So, do we agree? Do we have agreement that, yes, these are the ways we go. If someone is speaking, they are allowed to complete their sentence. Okay? When one person is speaking, no one else is speaking. Okay? That's just one thing that we believe in our small group. Okay? And that also applies to things like respect and those kinds of issues. But if you have a group, and there, you know, whatever your goal is, if you're in a classroom or if you're on a football team, generally speaking, there's a goal there. Generally speaking, the group is about there's some reason for the group existing. And what you will find within the group is there will be much agreement as to how things should go. And I have taught in classrooms with 20 dysfunctional kids, and we have had wonderful groups, okay, because of facilitating a group process. And it's not authoritarian. You have to involve each and every student. And so each and every student is encouraged to participate, okay? And they are allowed to participate. And if their beliefs come up contradictory to what most other people are believing, naturally they will reflect on it. And then what happens with the respect thing is, and this, I credit this with easily 40% of my success in the classroom, is not picking unnecessary power struggles. If a kid wants to put their feet on the desk, okay. As long as you're not disrupting the class, and as long as you are still learning what you need to learn today. Okay? Well, I'm not going to have that battle with you. Because what happens is, you can't do that, well, then the kid gets his foot up on the chair, waiting for me to stop him. You know, and if I don't stop him there, then it's up on the armrest. You know, and you know, you're just wasting time over nonsensical things. So if you're more comfortable that way, what you find out is the kid puts their foot up on the desk, you don't argue about it, well, it gets really uncomfortable. And 10 minutes later, it's back on the floor because it's just more natural to sit in a chair. And you avoid wasting 20 minutes of time arguing with a kid. Okay, so enough on that. It goes really with the group facilitation. And it really has to go that way. So I'm going to read some things here. It is metacognitive. Metacognition is just simply another name for communication. And that's what this is all about, is communication. It's your right brain and your left brain communicating with each other. Okay? And that's with you individually. And if it's in a marriage, you know, it's the guy and the girl communicating with each other. Okay? And if it's in a group, it's the same thing. You want the creativity. You want creativity. Okay? And so when you're talking about different ideas, that's the time for creativity. Well, we could do it this way. Well, we could do it that way. Well, what do you think? Well, we could try this. Okay, so then you get all your ideas together, and now you have, that's called creativity. These are all the ways we could go. Well, then you come to a place where you have to make a decision. And so you go through the merits of all the creative ideas, which were divergent in nature. But then when you come down to the time of making the decision, you converge and you bring those into focus. And so there is a time for creativity, and then there is a time for focus. And so those are the things, and that's all about communication. And so that's what, when I say metacognition, that is just another name for communication. And so, in the group, what do? You talk about that which is understood. Okay? So in the group process, what do we agree on? Okay? So is everybody up to speed, you know, on the order of operations in a math class? Okay? So that's what we all, as this group, we all understand now order of operations. Are there any questions? Is everybody on board with that understanding? Okay, good. And then, but we're going to keep it current. Oh, well, this is a complicated equation. And so I'm not sure how the order goes here. Well, okay, so now in the current situation, we're going to address that. Now, that also works for like, you know, somebody says something nasty to one kid says something mean to another kid. That's a group process. That's a group, that is a group issue. We as a group are going to deal with this. Okay, so fine, you put the chalk down. Okay, so this is disrupting class, so now it becomes a group issue. Okay, so who said what? Okay, you go first. And we're going to have our rules. One person gets to talk, then the other person. So it doesn't, when I say it's something that we understand, it doesn't have to just be curriculum. It can also be personal. And so when a kid comes in and their dog died last night, well, you know, that's a group issue. Well, we're sorry your dog died. You know, if you need to go, you know, get a drink of water, if you want to go down and talk to a counselor, if you want to put your head down today, you know, we understand, and we're sorry, and you know, it's a group issue, and we're all with what we all understand. This kid's dog died. Okay, that's the understanding, and it's current. It happened just now. Okay, now if this dog died 10 years ago, well, I'm sorry, we're not. You need to be over that by now. Okay, and the group process is the greatest instructional methodology. Because you're in the current, and everyone has an equal share, and everyone has an equal share in this company, which is called our group. Everyone has an equal share. So the teacher has an equal share with the students. Every student has the same share in that group as the teacher. I don't get more of a share because I'm teaching. I'm equal. Okay? As a person, I'm equal. You know, my football team loses, and I just don't feel too good today. You know, I don't get a lot of sympathy, but at least they understand. And that's okay. And so, we talked about the trust and the authority, prudence and temperance, and we talked about truth and power and justice and fortitude. So metacognition, another name for communication. We talked about that. Now, here's part of the way the group process goes. We focus our speech on agreement for the noggin. And what happens when you refocus on what do we agree on? Okay, where are we as a group with our understanding? When you do that, what happens in the natural law? Okay, so we're looking at we're focusing speech on agreement, on our understanding. That's in the noggin. Okay, that's in the human law. And then when we apply that, what happens in the natural law is the dialogue in the group, the truthful dialogue increases. And people start to apply it. And then they start to share how they've applied it. And so the truthful dialogue naturally increases when you're using a group facilitation process. And that's just with the noggin. Now, what happens here with the heart? Like I said, avoid unnecessary power struggles. Okay? So, you know, some kid wears a polka dot shirt with striped pants. Okay? My mother would not let me out of the house that way. I get that. But I'm not going to make an issue over that. And nor should anyone else. Avoid unnecessary power struggles. Okay, that's in the heart. And then what happens in the relationship? What happens in the eternal law? Is defensiveness is reduced. The kid's not going to be called out because he's wearing clothes, because his mom, they can't afford to wash their clothes, or his clothes are dirty, or smelly, or ragged. And that's just one example as to how kids get picked on. Okay? But we don't do that. Okay? We don't talk about personality issues unless they're impacting the group. And so we avoid all these struggles, and what happens is everyone knows this is a safe place to be. And it doesn't matter how much or how deep your information that you're disseminating is. If it is not emotionally safe, it's going to really be truncated. And the same thing is true going the other direction. And so as an educator, and this is why, and I'm appealing to you guys who teach in Sunday schools and Catholic churches, is to incorporate learning theory, incorporate all of this educational knowledge that many of you should have had when you went to your ed school. You should have been through this stuff. You should know bell-shaped curve. You should know the difference between concrete and abstract learning, which takes place at about 10 years old. So when you get those middle schoolers, some of them are still concrete learners. And they're going to have difficulty understanding algebraic concepts. And some kids are going to be abstract and they're going to get it right away. And then the other kids are going to be called stupid. And then they're going to feel really bad. And then they're going to hate math for the rest of their life. Well, they could be an Einstein. Their brain just needs another year to grow. Oh my gosh. As an educator, you should know that. And if you're a parent educating your own children, you should know that. And oh, by the way, there are 3 learning styles. Okay? I'm a nerd. I'm an auditory learner. Okay? You tell me, I hear it. Okay, we're good. Okay? Creative people, your art people, your English people, people who like words. They're visual. Okay? So in math, I like equations. Give me the equation. Okay? The visual learners, give me a nice pretty graph. That's how I understand. Okay? So when you get back to group process, okay, so your nerds are picking up on the equations, and if the teacher only teaches with equations, factor or fail, if you got one of those teachers, well, doggone it. All of those visual learners are going to be handicapped. They're not going to feel good about their thing. It is not going to be emotionally safe. Okay? And so, yeah, when the kids are coming up, and when they're concrete learners, yeah, you need to be really nurturing. And the further they go into their learning, okay, so you go all the way through, now you're going to be a fighter pilot in a jet. Well, you take care of your own emotions. We're not nurturing you anymore. You get this right, and you got 2 seconds to do it, or you die. Okay? And so you're going to move more from the instruction into the curriculum. And again, these are discussions you have with middle schoolers. What are your aptitudes, kid? I had kids in my math classes who had greater math aptitude than I did, and some of them had greater understanding of some of the mathematical concepts than I did. And I encouraged them. I said, you go for it. I said, that's not happening in this class because we're about algebra in here. But if you want to go to those advanced, go. And here are some names of people who can help you. But that's not the purpose of this class. And then the same thing was with the kids who didn't quite get it. It's like, look, we're in here for 180 days. And you are smart enough to master this material. And I know you're not going to go on into advanced mathematics. But for the purpose of this class, you will succeed. So those who struggle still could reach success in the group process. And those who were advanced, they're not being held back. I might give them materials or have them go see another teacher when they've done their classwork. Okay? Again, it's group process. And again, it's what do we understand, okay? And it's being current. And it's being okay going back and forth with that. And it's not just being okay, it's like this is our process. This is what we do. Now, we also had the kinesthetic learners. Okay, so those were our football players and our basketball players. And they just want the answers. They don't care about the equations. They don't care about the